grateful to be alive. I'm grateful for many things, for my family, the support of my team. So the fact that I walk into work every day, it's not a job for me, it's something that I enjoy and I love, is really the best gift of all. So I'm Oday Shakar, and I'm here in my New York City showroom, and I am an Iraqi American designer here in New York City. I was born in Southern California and grew up most of my life there until about the age of 12. Both my parents are Iraqi immigrants who came here for a better life, opportunity for their kids to have a better life. When I was a little boy, all I really loved to do was draw. I'd isolate in my room and I'd put my music on blast and I'd just sketch. When I was 12 years old, it was right after Gulf War I in 1993, my parents decided they really wanted me and my sister to get the chance to meet my grandmother. And so they decided to send us, which was supposed to be for a short trip, and that turned into a year and a half of my life and living in Iraq. I remember feeling a state of shock because all I had ever seen was Southern California. The smells and the architecture was so different. And then the drive into Iraq was when I first realized, wow, I'm going somewhere, that's really seen some difficult times. I remember you could still see some of the on the side of the road, the destruction from what had taken place there. So it was a bit scary because I was 12 years old, not being with my parents and only my younger sister. It was a little bit difficult. It was an adjustment. We felt like, okay, we're American, and here we are hearing about our homeland at war with the country we're from, and then to go there and see what was happening there. It was definitely a feeling of not sure where I'm from, but I ended up finding kind of a middle place where being from both places and kind of just went with it, My family is the most loving, warm family. We come from a very large family with big personalities, and so I just kind of gravitated towards getting to know all these people I had never met before. So it was actually a wonderful experience. I wouldn't change it for the world, and I really got to learn about who I am and where I come from. So Ammi Iman, my Aunt Iman, she studied fashion design in London, and so when she first saw my sketches, she was like, you're drawing fashion, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what that means. And so she would give me assignments every week and tell me I have to draw a fall season and front and back of the garment and explain to me how to drape. And when she saw my natural ability for draping, she was like, okay, you have to pursue this. And so for a year and a half, she taught me quite a bit. It was really exciting. And so by the time I left Iraq, I was determined that was what I was going to do, I met my mother in Beirut, and then my uncle was able to get us tickets to an El Isab couture runway show. And when I saw pieces come down the runway for the first time, I was like, oh my God, I had chills, and I just remember thinking, I have to do this. So I studied still life drawing, and took college level classes at a young age to just better my skill with my hands and be able to be the best illustrator I could be as a fashion designer. And so when I came back, I felt like I was a totally different person. And so it was a culture shock to come back. It was weird to what was so familiar to me before had become unfamiliar. And so it took adjustment again to adjust back to living in Southern California. It was a transition. I immediately was applying to colleges across the country. but I couldn't at the time afford to come to New York. So I chose to go to college in Los Angeles at FIDM, and I studied fashion design. And the minute I began my education, I began working in the field in menswear. And I remember the day I just walked up and down the streets looking for a job. It's because I needed a form of income. And I saw a store that looked to me like a brand. And I said, I'll work for free. And so I began as an intern, and then after, I think, 30 days, they hired me as an assistant designer. That was Von Dutch Clothing. It was a menswear line that we launched back in early 2000s that did pretty well. It was pretty popular for a while, but it was not my passion. It was a way to begin my experience in the field, but I was always passionate about women's clothing. Men's clothing is kind of limited, I met Christina Milian when I was actually at Von Dutch, and she became a bit of a friend, and the relationship grew, and she was releasing her first US album and had a single to be released and music video that they were producing, and asked if I would present them with designs for the music video. And so that was my first work in women's wear, and I sewed all the garments myself in my Hollywood apartment and we created the music video Dip It Low with the help of a great creative team, and I began doing some performance pieces for her. And then I actually took that experience and decided I was going to create my own evening wear pieces for women, and created 7 gowns on my own and showed at the Mercedes-Benz LA Fashion Week event where I had my pieces presented, and I was 21 at the time. And so that was my first showcase as a women's wear designer. At the time, they said I was the youngest in LA to showcase couture gowns. In 2008 was the big turning point in my life. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and at the time I went in for a physical checkup, and they realized that I was inflamed in my neck, and so they did some biopsy work and realized that I had 4th stage, and my life kind of just flashed before my eyes. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. Sorry. I always have a hard time talking about this, huh? Yeah. My doctor called me. I was actually carrying, I remember I was carrying all this fabric on my shoulder, walking up these flight of stairs, and he called me on the phone. He said, "Are you sitting down?" And I said, "No, why do I need to be sitting down?" And he's like, you've been diagnosed with 4th-stage thyroid carcinoma. And I was like, what does that even mean? I don't know the terminology. And so he explained it to me, and it was due to radiation exposure. And his best guess was that I had gotten this from living in Iraq. And so I had to have emergency surgery due to the extent of my diagnosis. And I had just started planning the release of my private atelier, and was in the works of building it, and had to have surgery. So I was in remission for almost 6 months, and I beat the cancer, and I've been cancer-free for many years now. But it taught me an extremely valuable lesson in life, is that you just never know. And so from that point on, I dedicated everything I did to pursuing my dreams, and launched my atelier once I was recovered, and began my career really in Southern California at that point. And I got very involved with cancer organizations, and started with Susan G. Komen and we live auctioned a few pieces, and it put me on the cover of the LA Times. And it was really the start to my career. So I kind of took that experience and was like, you can't hold me down. And so I just became a fighter from that point on. I remember I had to be isolated for radiation. And so I just picked up my sketch pad and just started sketching. And by the time I was released, I had gotten the call that the atelier had been finished and that I could move in. And so I got my friends and my U-Haul, and we set up shop and moved the sewing machines in, and I began creating my first pieces right away, and it really kind of launched my career as a women's wear designer. It's a tough industry. It's always changing, and there's so many elements to it, but one of the things that I've kind of stuck with me is that you just can't give up, no matter what. So I was just able to move my business to New York City, and now I'm ready to kind of show the world what I'm doing. And so I came here and I began sketching away and designing and draping and creating my concept, and showcased for the first time at New York Fashion Week in September. Looking back, I just feel like so blessed that I was given the opportunity and able to put myself on a platform that would allow more people to see my work and see where I come from and where my aesthetic lies. I would say definitely feel like I'm living the American dream, in a sense that to see it first through my parents' eyes and the struggles they went through, and then to be able to take from their experiences as well as learn my own destiny and never give up.